And just before we start, I wanted to mention something real quick. I'm actually looking for some viewers to help me with a couple of videos that I wanted to make for some of my other channels. So if you maybe want your name in a video, or if you just want to be awesome and help me out a bit, or maybe just stop by and say hi, check out our Discord server at the link in the description where we'll be organizing everything. Thanks, and enjoy the video. What's up guys, it's me, Jeremy. League of Legends is a game that's been around for just about maybe over 10 years now, and there's been quite a few things that used to exist in the game that have been really just forgotten over the years. So today I wanted to take a blast through the past and cover some of the more interesting and nostalgic things that only old League of Legends players will remember. So if you're an old player, hope you enjoy the nostalgia trip, and if you're a new player, maybe you'll learn a few things about the history of the game. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like on it or let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for some more videos. So the first thing up that I wanted to take a look back at is of course the classic original beta game launcher and user interface. The launcher was actually really similar to the Warcraft 3 Battle.net launcher back in the day. With some really ominous music, it was a theme that League had a bit more in its early days. The launcher had a lot of black and blank space in it. The old profile page showed only a few things really: your wins and losses, your most played champions, how your current masteries were split up, a section for room pages as well, and a brief overview of your past few matches. The champions are all in these huge black rectangles, only 4 wide, with a huge scroll bar. Corki's cutout isn't even centered on his square, and it's just a total mess all over the place. And of course also take notice of the blue exclamation marks in the upper left of the champion portraits. This was during the pre-release of the game, where all 40 champions were temporarily available to be played, meaning that you didn't need to unlock them until the game was launched later on. Also, the only roles in the game so far that were filterable here were Assassin, Mage, Fighter, Support, and Tank. When you selected a champion, you get some other interesting Dota-like attributes like Stun, Farmer, Slow, or maybe Carry. Most champion information is the same as now, but take a look at these Ashe recommendations. Ability power, mana regen, mana, and health, man, these are just all over the place. Now back at this time, AD scaling on abilities actually didn't exist, and every ability in the game just had AP scaling, but this is still pretty odd to look back at, as AD carry was still a thing. Of course it would still impact your auto attacks. Anyway, the spell tab brings back a few memories too, when there was a revive summoner spell that just, straight up revived you when it died from way back in the day, but of course had an atrociously long cooldown. Fortify made all towers invulnerable and made them attack twice as fast for a few seconds. Rally created a ward-like entity that gave nearby units increased attack damage, and Clairvoyance was a global ability that revealed part of the map for a short time. Most of these summoner spells weren't necessarily that popular, or only were used in sort of weird and niche strategies, which actually leads me to the next thing that we're taking a look at, and that is the original meta for League of Legends. Champion positions, and of course, probably what I would consider to be the first quote-unquote meta for the game, which was that of the roaming support. During the early life of League of Legends, champion metas in general were really just not set in stone at all. The jungle monsters in the game used to be extremely powerful, so unless you were a Warwick or you had some kind of major setup, it was actually really difficult to jungle. So a lot of the times you might have 2 champions go top, 1 champion go mid, and 2 champions go bottom. And after a while, the jungle meta started to develop a little bit, and a few champions here and there became a lot more viable in the jungle in general. But there was kind of this beauty of back in the day of just really not really having a concrete meta defined for the game in general. So for a lot of the times, people would kind of just, everyone would really just pick their favorite champion, go wherever, and just have a great time. The compositions weren't really too thought out at all. Sometimes you might have a Malphite and a Janna go top lane, or maybe a Taric and Karthus go bottom. The mid lane was actually usually where the AD carries would hang out because of their increased range, and since AD carry bottom was not actually a standard practice yet, Season 1 bottom lane kind of developed into 2 major strategies later on once the meta started to get more defined, and that was you would either go double bruiser bottom or you would have a roaming support. The roaming support strategy would oftentimes leave just one champion to defend the lane, while a support champion, usually Alistar or Taric, sometimes Janna, would just roam around the rest of the map and just gank the other lanes constantly, like the whole game. The roaming support, they wouldn't really farm the jungle or do much else, they kind of just gank every single lane over and over again and try to snowball the carries. And you would pick up items like Heart of Gold, Philosopher's Stone, and Cage's Lucky Pick that would give you some minor stats here and there, but more importantly, passive gold income that let these roaming supports not fall off completely in terms of gold income. For a time, this roaming support strategy was actually extremely overpowered to the point where pretty much all the popular choices for roaming support champions ended up getting heavily nerfed, the major one being Alistar especially. Then in the Worlds Final for Season 1, Fnatic proved that AD carry bot lane would become the dominant meta format from then onwards. Speaking of old tournaments, if you ever watched League of Legends way back in the day, the old way to spectate games for tournaments, particularly before the Season 1 championship, was just about as jank as it gets really. During Season 1, especially for third-party tournaments, there was no spectate mode in the game whatsoever, so casting was extremely difficult, and so Riot implemented this sort of band-aid solution, which was to give players running tournaments access to a special client that allowed both teams to play with 6 players on each team, and so the extra player would just sit in base and they would get access to an unlocked vision version of the map. However, the vision wasn't actually flexible, so it led to tournaments being shown with 0 fog of war on the entire map. The players experienced the game as normal, but the audience did not. And another problem with this solution was actually there were times where the 6th player, they would still be considered a champion in the game, kind of just like sitting in the base the whole time. So there were actually instances in third-party tournaments where things like Karthus' ultimate actually ended up getting kills on the Spectator, which of course was the final straw, and this was actually what led to the change that gave players who are AFK in the fountain or disconnected a ton of extra armor and magic resistance while they're still in the base. By the time the Season 1 Worlds came out though, an actual observer mode was developed, and the rest is kind of just history. It looks like Season 1 Worlds is really when the game saw a ton of improvements in this regard. Moving away from competitive play stuff, we're taking a look at the lore, and League of Legends used to have sort of this in-world news publication called the Journal of Justice that ran pretty much all throughout Season 1. It described various events that happened in the world, and it was really just kind of fun to read. It was like a newspaper for Runeterra, essentially, and it was how League of Legends developed lore back in the day, for the most part. At least lore that was outside of individual champions. You know, stuff like pirate raids, the Freljord Uprising, or even just talk about the players or summoners, as they were canon to the old lore of League of Legends. It was put on hold at the start of Season 2 for many other methods of conveying the lore, but it never returned. Starting in 2014, Riot also massively revamped pretty much all the lore in the game, so the Journals of Justice are not really canon anymore, just dust in the wind. I have to admit, the old League of Legends website from way back in the day, if we take a look through the Wayback Machine, the old League of Legends website also bears quite a few interesting kind of bits and pieces of information. Of course, it had information on the champions and items, but Riot also used to keep an in-development section on their website way back in the day, where they would talk about some things that they were developing at the time. And a lot of the things, if we take a look, did eventually make it into the game. Of course, things like ranked, seasons, teams, clans, at least in some capacity, at least. I guess it had a different name though. It's a little funny that replays are on here, considering it took Riot like 7 years to get that one developed. Additional maps did come eventually in the form of Dominion, but they didn't really stick around in any competitive circles and really just kind of flopped overall. Now, there are a few other things that were kind of interesting that they were working on, one being in-game tournaments. You know, Clash is somewhat similar to an in-game tournament system, but it's been delayed, but it's really interesting to see like the things that Riot used to be working on. I know one of the things that was also listed on their website way back in the day was actually voice chat for League of Legends. As well, something that's been returning the past few years is actually the Summoner's Rift Winter map. Now, the Winter map was originally introduced in 2009 for the Winter Showdown event and continued to show up every winter until 2011. It was then added to the Summoner's Rift look in 2016 and has also appeared since, but I'm pretty sure most people who played League of Legends remember the original Winter map because there's just so many videos made from it and it's happened so many times that it's kind of hard to forget. Now, the one map skin that's particularly interesting that I think is probably difficult to remember, is actually the Autumn Summoner's Rift map. Now, the reason why is because this variation was only ever used once in 2010 for the Harrowing Halloween event. There was an Easter egg on this map as well, where there were 3 coffins off on the side of the map that had the bodies of several cancelled champions in them, including Gavid the Plant King, which kind of ended up becoming Zyra, a strange alien-like creature named Averdrian that wasn't really reworked into anyone in particular, and Tabu the Voodoo Shaman, who we actually covered a lot more in depth on this channel a couple weeks ago. Now, the next thing on this list is actually probably my personal favorite. I think it's just so hilarious, and it's actually that Riot used to have another game in their roster. That's right, they actually released a mobile game way back in the day, League of Legends Turret Defense. It was a free mobile game that they made to market the release of League of Legends. So it was a tower defense game where you placed upgraded towers to stop 50 waves of minions, dragons, and even a few champions. Surprisingly, it's done in a style where the towers can be built anywhere on the map, letting you kind of create this maze of towers that the enemies have to walk through, instead of having the enemies go through a set path and building turrets within that. There were 4 towers in the game. You would get a basic lightning tower, a poison tower that slowed whatever it hit, an inhibitor type tower with a short range that kind of damaged everything around it, and a long range lightning tower with high damage and a slow attack speed. Each turret could be upgraded twice for improved damage. Ryze would also appear on some levels and use Rune Prison to disable some of your towers so it couldn't attack. Alistar would also appear too and use Pulverize to stun all the nearby towers. The game also had an endless mode to see how long you could survive. Sadly though, the game isn't really available, although you can actually still re-download the game if you ever downloaded it in the past, but I have to imagine that it's probably not supported with the most recent versions of things like iOS and Android. But that's actually just about going to wrap up our list for today. Now, this certainly isn't everything cool that happened back in the day, so if you guys have maybe some suggestions for things we should cover the next time we make a video like this, or if you want to see a second episode of this topic, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Hit that like button, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you guys next time.